Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now on the phone is Texas Governor and former GOP presidential candidate Rick Perry. And Governor Perry, thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome, Kathleen.
And first, our hearts go out to Texans this morning after North Texas was slammed by a series of deadly tornadoes overnight. Just how bad is the devastation, and can you give us an update on the situation there?
All right. Well, thank you for those prayers. And Texas, unfortunately, because of where we are geographically, we have our fair share of natural disasters, whether it's hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, wildfires. We are very adept at dealing with them. And then we have our those that you really don't see coming, like the space shuttle disaster that occurred some years back, the West fertilizer plant explosion. All of those combine to keep our emergency management people very busy. But it appears that the media reports are fairly accurate at this particular point in time. Probably 100+ houses impacted over in Hood County, which is where Granbury is located. 6 fatalities there. Unconfirmed, and I'm always a little bit sensitive about unconfirmed reports, but there were some other areas of the state further east from Granbury that were also hit. So we have our search and rescue people on site now, searching for any other individuals who might have been trapped in the wreckage of this horrendous storm. But again, thanks for the prayers
Sure.
and the concerns across the country. Obviously, the Red Cross is a great place to help at this initial time, and we have it well under hand.
Governor, I'd like to get your take on political news while we have you today, specifically first on the IRS harassment of conservative groups. More than 200 groups are said to have been targeted, including True the Vote, which I know is headquartered in your home state of Texas. When President Obama says that he and the White House were not involved in the IRS activities, do you believe him?
Well, you want to believe that the leaders of your country would never be involved in that, but what we're seeing out of this administration is a pattern of disregard for our laws. Benghazi and the IRS, the Associated Press, all of those stories are making people on the left and the right step back and scratch their head. The symptom here appears to be an administration, and I put a little bit of this at the feet of the mainstream media, because they've given this administration a pass time after time after time, because they agreed with them, they liked their politics and what have you. But when you are not held accountable, just like a child, they will push the envelope. They will go outside the bounds of responsible action if there is not someone to govern them. So you always want to believe that your government is going to protect you. The government is going to be there to address your needs, whatever they may be. And this administration is breaking down the trust that people, whether they're in the media, whether they are young men and women who are putting their lives on the line for us in far-off places around the globe. They're asking the question, if I get in a pickle, if we get in a situation where my life is in jeopardy, is America going to come and use every resource that they have to save my life? What we've heard out of Benghazi time after time is no. And that is an inappropriate answer for our government.
Republicans in the House and the Senate are holding hearings to investigate. How should they hold those responsible accountable? And if it's proven that President Obama or White House officials knew of this or authorized this, should the House draw up impeachment articles?
Well, the IRS issue is very troubling. When you start seeing them targeting the Tea Party, conservative groups that have certain names that they say is probably conservative in nature. Going after religious groups, I was stunned when I saw some of the questions that were asked of the Jewish groups, Billy Graham's organization. So it appears that this is targeted at any conservative group that did not fall in line with the Obama administration's philosophical beliefs. Mm-hmm. That is, if it goes to the highest levels, and again, we don't know that, but if this goes to the highest levels of the White House, then obviously there are a lot of options out there that are appropriate, up to and including, I would suggest to you, looking at the removal of individuals up to and including the President of the United States, if he is culpable in this type of activity.
Governor, during the first Obama administration, some U.S. lawmakers from Texas told me that the White House punished the Lone Star State because it is a red or Republican state. They cited the administration's decisions to deny fire-ravaged Texans FEMA aid and to reject Texas, home to NASA's Johnson Space Center, as a final resting spot for one of the decommissioned space shuttles, as examples. Has Texas, too, been victimized by what some describe as the Obama administration's retaliatory tactics?
You know, I think the broader issue for us is that during the presidential, I was very critical of the amount of expenditures coming out of Washington, D.C. I am not an anti-government conservative. I am a small government conservative. I do believe that the federal government has a very important role to play in a vast area, whether it's the security of our border, obviously keeping our country safe, and the military side of it. And I will suggest to you that this issue of border security is where I have the biggest beef with this administration. And I do think that Texas has been very vocal in our pushback on this administration, telling, I tried to deliver this president a letter on the tarmac some years ago about border security, that we know how to deal with this, and the federal government has been woefully inept in dealing with putting the strategic fencing in place, the boots on the ground, the aviation assets. As a matter of fact, we've seen major reductions in the number of Border Patrol agents and the focus on the border. So the short answer is yes. I don't think that this administration has given Texas the appropriate response to things like our border. And keep in mind, this is a state that the administration did not have Texas' ability to create jobs. The unemployment numbers and the job creation numbers in this country would be even more abysmal than they are by a substantial margin. Over the last 10 years, almost a third of all the jobs created in America were created in Texas. This president showed up less than 2 weeks ago in Austin on a jobs tour. He came to the most successful state in the nation. It was really interesting, not because of his policies, but in spite of his policies, is Texas doing well, because the state understands how to create an environment of not overtaxing, over-regulating, over-litigating, and developing a skilled workforce. Mm-hmm. He came to the right place. I hope he's serious about implementing those types of policies at the federal level.
Governor, you touched on the border, so let's chat for a second about bipartisan immigration reform. The proposal is expected to pass the Senate. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, opposes the legislation. He says it doesn't go far enough in terms of securing the border. Do you agree with Senator Cruz?
I think Senator Cruz is absolutely correct. Ted knows this issue rather well, and when you add individuals like Michael McCall, who's chairman of that Homeland Security Committee, who knows that border incredibly well, I will suggest to you that the legislation is not going to get a warm welcome in the House until they do address issues about securing the border. You cannot have a legitimate conversation about border security about immigration reform until you deal with the issue of border security. And as far as I'm concerned, this bill does not address it. And until you address border security, I'm not going to be much inclined to have a academic conversation, which is all it will be until you secure the border.
All right, so you can't endorse this legislation in any way?
I cannot.
All right. Jeb Bush has said that by 2016, Texas will likely be a blue state. Do you agree with that assessment?
Not even close. Texas is a red state because they believe in freedom. And I will suggest to you the Hispanic who lives in Texas understands what freedom is all about. They are very engaged, small businessmen and women. They want to keep more of what they work for. They want to have their children being able to afford to go to an institution of higher learning. And the Democrats are on the wrong side of those issues. They want to see more money go to government in the form of higher taxes and more regulation. They want to see the cost of education going up because of there's clear pushback on our being able to make $10,000 college degree available from the Democrats in the state of Texas. So Democrats believe in bigger government. Democrats believe in taking more of your money away from you to fund that government. Hispanics in Texas understand that freedom is at the root of this state's prosperity, and you're not going to see Texas turning blue or even purple anytime in the near future, and I will suggest to you, possibly never.
Governor, the president recently said that massive resistance from states, including Texas, has complicated efforts to implement the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. How can the states or Republicans in Congress stop Obamacare?
Well, my first response to what the president said is good, because Obamacare is a disaster. We now know that we were either misrepresented intentionally or lied to, either way, about the cost of this. You are seeing time after time evidence that there was a reason that members of the legislature were not allowed to read this before they voted on it, because had it been analyzed properly, even a lot of Democrats, I would suggest, wouldn't have voted for this piece of legislation. It is going to drive us towards national health care. It's going to drive us, which I think was always the real intention, to single-payer type of a concept. Single-payer drives the cost up, and it also makes health care substantially less available. So we will do everything that we can in Texas to make sure that Obamacare is not implemented, because it is disastrous to a state's budget, whether you're Texas or California, or for that matter, Rhode Island. And it will make health care less effective and efficient and available.
Governor, last question for you. When I interviewed you at CPAC earlier this year, you mentioned to me that you were still weighing whether to run for president or governor again. Can you update us and our viewers on your plans?
Well, we have less than 14 days left of our legislative session, and that's where my focus is. Texas is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing state in the nation. Economically, we were again chosen by CEO magazine as the #1 state in the nation to do business for the 9th year in a row. Site Selector magazine chose us as the best state. Foreign direct investment, the #1 state for that type of investment from foreign entities. So the Texas success story continues on at full speed. We have our challenges, but that said, when you have that many people, over 1,000 a day moving into the state, you have transportation infrastructure issues you have to deal with. You have water and the ability to both create more water and to move that water around in the state. So big challenges there, but we're addressing them, and hopefully at the end of this legislative session or this summer, we will have addressed those and given real long-term commitment to infrastructure, both water and surface transportation, plus giving back a pretty substantial tax cut in the form of some form of tax relief approaching $1.8 billion is my goal. Powerful message come out of Texas about the economic climate here. Once that is behind us, I'll sit down with family and friends and make the decision about 2014, and then probably later in the year about 2016.
All right, Texas Governor Rick Perry, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Kathleen. Godspeed.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.